So raise your hand if you are an administrator for a school, if you're an administrator. Yeah, okay. And if you're what we're going to be talking about today is, might be, I thought it might fall a little bit more into the administrator bucket, but it might not. We're talking a little bit about what to do, you know, with open houses, student placement tests, class visits, virtual tours, that kind of thing. Certainly anybody is welcome to attend, and you might be the designated hitter for your team to come to the meeting and then report back, which is fine too. Looks like we've got a few more folks joining. So I'll do my best to kind of go through the content that I have, and then if you have questions, I will probably ignore the chat box, only because it interrupts my train of thought to have a question pop up and then try to read it and then think about how I want to respond, but finish the sentence that I was just in the middle of. So we're going to do this the old-fashioned way. If you have a question, if you could just raise your hand and then I'll call on you. We'll do it that way. I don't think that this group is going to be so big that we can't do that. If it gets really large, then we'll use our, like, a digital hand or something to just to alert me that you have a question. But I don't mind if you all, like, as long as you're saying nice things, I don't mind if you're using a chat box to each other, but I won't be opening it or reading it because it'll just distract me a little bit. But we'll go ahead and get started. So I'll just say again, if you're here and you've got your video, if you could turn it on, just because it makes it so much easier for me to talk with people. And if Janet, looks like we're looking at the bottom of a table. I'm not sure. There, hello. I can't hear you because you're muted, but what'd you say?
My camera's under a shelf, so I'm trying to get my computer out from behind there. Sorry.
That's okay. It's all right. All right. And then I'll just say now that I have some slides that I'm going to be going through, and I have, that I'll actually be kind of walking us through. If I will make those slides available, if that would be helpful. This is being recorded, so if we can share it with any of the registrants, if any of you, if that would be helpful. And then I have two other things that I was going to show you. One is a sample of the way we do our online open houses. So just sort of an example of what that could look like. It's not a template or anything like that. You can't just go put your information in, but it might give you an idea if you'd like that. And then I also have, because we do our open houses online as well, I also have my PowerPoint presentation that I'd be willing to, we'll look through today, but if you wanted to take a closer look at that, I could send that to you as like just the slides, so you could take a look at that too. So there will be several things. So if you miss something, don't feel like you need to take screenshots or image grabs or anything. You'll get everything that I'm going to show to you either by video or otherwise. So as I mentioned, this is mostly going to be a talk here about, beyond online classes. We're going to talk about open houses. It's probably we're going to spend the bulk of our time, but some of these same ideas that we talk about in open houses can be applied to things like virtual tours and that kind of thing. But we'll also talk a little bit about student visits and placement evaluations. I want to say quickly, though, that I don't know which platform all of you are using. So I'm presenting this as if you're using something like Zoom, which is what we're using right now. If you're not using a platform, or if your community won't have access to a platform like Zoom, we might have to brainstorm a little bit differently for you. But even if you're not offering your classes online, you could still use Zoom for some of your community engagement pieces. So you might just want to think that through. And if not, I know the other website platforms would be like WebEx is something that's kind of similar to Zoom. GoToMeeting is another one that's kind of similar to Zoom as well. So you just might want to think through what platform you want to use. Again, I'm most familiar with this one, and so that's where my ideas are kind of coming from. So we'll start with the idea of an open house. And there's really, I think, about 6 different steps to planning an open house here, and it's really the planning and logistics. One is marketing, which avenues You've got to come up with a schedule, like who's going to attend, what are you going to cover, when is it going to be, where is it going to be, which Zoom room is it going to be in. Hosting, you're probably going to have to tag in a number of your instructors and some different administrators. How are you going to promote this? That's another issue that we're going to want to think about. How to handle online registrations, especially considering the idea of some online security that you'll just want to think through a little bit, and we can talk about some of that. And then there's going to be some follow-up engagement as well. So I've kind of vacillated back and forth between what I should show you first. Should I go through all the steps, or should I just kind of show you some of my pieces first? I'm going to show you some of my pieces, and then I'm going to go back and sort of go through what how I did each one of those with the pieces that I was using. So I hope I'm not backing myself into this. You'll have to let me know at the end if this was a good way to kind of go about doing this, or if you would have preferred it the other way. But I'll start by showing you can everybody see my PowerPoint here? Oops. This is the PowerPoint presentation that I prepared for my my online school, Scholé Academy in St. Raphael School. And I should have stopped and just said too what my name is and everything. I just jumped right in. I'm sorry. I sort of forget. You don't just sort of omnisciently know. My name is Joelle Hodge. Sorry about that. I'm the director for Scholé Academy, which is an online classical school that is an offshoot of Classical Academic Press. So Classical Academic Press is a publishing company, obviously. And then we have a school that we run that primarily uses CAP resources, but not exclusively. That school is about 6 years old. We started in 2014 with 4 students. And this year that we're currently in, we had over 1,000 enrollments, representing about 650 families and about 650 students and about 450 unique families. So we do this kind of like online stuff every day with live interactive sessions with all of our students and all of our classes. So this is how we do college night. This is how we do open house. This is how I do coffee with the principal and teachers. We invite parents to come and I do coffee with them. Everybody brings their cup of coffee, and we've got parents and families who are from all over the world, mostly from the United States, but I try to pick a time when it's still kind of a reasonable hour to have coffee wherever you might be, depending on how much you love coffee that time of day. Could be all day or just a very narrow window. But everything from any of those kinds of online opportunities we do all through Zoom. So that's part of why I'm offering this to you, is just because we use it for all of these different activities anyway. So sorry, I should have done that right from the beginning. So this is my the PowerPoint presentation that I pulled together for my open house I think it was just last year. So we started with a general session where everybody comes to the general session, and everybody would then go through this presentation. And we always offered something to every family who registered. In our case, because Classical U is a professional, like a online professional development, teacher development, parent development resource, we gave everybody who registered a free 30-day trial for everyone who registered to our online open house. Other things that we've done in the past is it's very important for us that our community is all kind of on the same page with how we're defining what classical education is, and what is classical education, and what might be sort of like our big scope of what it is we're hoping families to kind of buy into. And so in years past, we've also given away copies of the liberal arts tradition, because that's something we would love for everybody to have read, if they're going to be part of our community. So it's a nice way to kind of introduce a book that you would want your families to be aware of and maybe to have read and understand as well. Sometimes you can tie that into something like, and should you decide to join our community, we're going to be doing this as a community read this year. And then you can, set up times to have, some ongoing follow-up with that book to make sure that they're digesting it and have somebody to interact with and that kind of thing too. So you might want to think of something, not a tote bag or anything, like that, but something that might be actually meaningful to the development of your community, that also kind of speaks to what kind of community you are. So if virtue cultivation is really important to you, if if that, you know, if that's a significant piece of the pie, then maybe you pick something like the liberal arts tradition, or maybe even a book by Joseph Pieper, or something that you could, you know, that you would be able to give out to everybody. So pick a book or something. I would recommend picking a book or something like that that's going to be within a price point that you wouldn't mind buying X number of copies of if you needed to. You'll get the registration list so that you can then order the copies that you need. So you don't have to kind of guess. You're not handing them out when people come, obviously. Because it's an online situation, so you can get the registrations in first and then see how many you actually have to order. But I mean, every school is going to go about that differently, but we found that to be kind of a lovely sort of like hostess kind of gifts, yeah, you know, like as if you're hosting folks together. So we just tried to set the tone that way with what could we do to make families feel welcome, to provide them something that would be enriching, and to, you know, offer them something for joining us. So you can decide what you want to do. In your case, Classical U was the piece that we decided to do. The next thing I did in our general session, before, you know, we get to any of our hosting with our teachers or anything, is I actually just put all the families into breakout rooms. Zoom has a way that you can pick. I could put all of you into breakout rooms. You can cluster everybody manually or have it do it sort of automatically, randomly for you. And I just put 5 people in a breakout room at a time, not at a time, in groups of 5. And I opened the breakout rooms. It randomly selected them. And I told them while they were in their breakout room, they needed to tell everybody what their name was. They needed to share what they were reading right then, you know, if there was a book that they were reading. And then I also invited them to identify one thing that they were hoping to learn about the school during the online open house. And with 5 people, I gave them about 5 minutes in the breakout room. It gave them an opportunity to see what this online dimension was. They felt a little bit more comfortable because there's just a whole bunch of other moms and dads that were in there, you know, that were kind of interested in some of the same things that they were. They met a few people that they didn't know. Our teachers that were attending were also part of the mix, so they just sort of got randomly put into some of these different breakout rooms as well, as did some of our administrators. And so, you know, somebody might end up with our math teacher in their group of 5. It's like, oh, so I'm Mrs. You know, Dr. Riley, and I teach math here at Scholé Academy, and you know, and so they kind of, some people got to meet a teacher just in the breakout room session. So that was kind of another way to just kind of in our case, community is very important to us, and so it was just another way to kind of make sure that they were being able to connect on a community level. So you'll probably start to pick up on the fact here that before you do any of these online extras, you want to think about what are some of the big ideas that you don't want to lose about your community before you do these things, and then look for ways to make sure that you're still achieving those connection points. So if community is very important to you, and a relational connection with your community is very important, and you know, making that, you know, the idea of hospitality is something that's very important to you as a school, then you want to look for ways to continue to do that. It'll just look a little bit different than it does when you're doing it live, right, in on site, but there are still ways to do this and try to come up with what connection points. So remember, make sure you don't just do what we do. I mean, I think what we did is good, but I'm sure that there are some distinctives about your school that you'll want to kind of capitalize on, and so you just kind of want to brainstorm what those are and not lose them in this process. So after I welcomed everybody back from the breakout rooms, I shared this. I actually created a video montage. Now remember, all of my students our school classes are all held on Zoom. So all of my videos are going to be like little videos of, you know, of like what our Zoom session is like. But I'm going to play about 2 minutes of this for you, just so you can see a little snippet of what it was. We basically took some of our class sessions. We put a little bit of, you know, classical music on in the background behind it. You can hear some of the conversation going on in class, and then we'll just kind of close with it very quickly. So let me just pull up here. This is right in the middle of a student's question, but this is Mr. Lockridge's room. So if for them, I would have played the whole thing, but I'm not going to make you sit through 5 minutes of our little video montage, but this gives you an idea of what we would have showed.
Just like escape routes, I guess, in general, or what would be the purpose, or why do you think they had it? only by the borders. They didn't really go too far inland.
Well, that's a great observation. So Marina is sort of noticing that Aristotle was right, that they are like frogs around a pond. They're not going way up in the weeds in the yard or anything like that. So the question then is why? Why do they seem to land on the coast? And this is something you could kind of speculate about. So if you were building a city, why do you think you'd want to have it on the coast instead of, say, you know, way up in Illyria or way down into Africa or something like that?
The last thing that I want to add here is sort of what these look like.
So that's a little bit about what our montage looks like. We just sort of put a slider in between the classes so they get a sense. And we did about 5 of these. And again, it just spanned about 5 minutes. This is me doing a formal logic class because I still did a formal logic class last year as one of my responsibilities. I won't make you sit through going through quality and quantity for formal logic, but that we just did a little segments of each one of these just to give a sense. We had one of our Greek classes in here. We had a Latin class in here. We did one of our Bible classes. So it's just, you know, you pick sort of a montage, put something kind of lovely together as far as the music goes in the background. It gives a little bit of a, you know, a bird's eye view of what goes on. Now, in your case, you might be thinking, well, all of our classes are online right now, or some other version of what we usually do. You're not really trying to sell an online version of your class, so you'll probably want to pull together something maybe akin to a slideshow. I'm sure you've got pictures of what student life is like from the young to the old, right? And you'll want to put that together. It's so easy to do if you have a Mac or iPhoto or something. Stack in the pictures that you want, pick some music to run in the background, keep it to, you know, somewhere between 3 and 5 minutes, and then play that. You can even have somebody giving an audible, you know, voiceover that can kind of talk through. But even if you create different slides, that can, you know, just on something like a PowerPoint slide that you could put into to kind of separate in between lower school, middle school, upper school, you could still give everybody an idea of what life is really like when you're not in quarantine, right? And so that I think that would probably be very easy for you to do. So that's just another thought. The next piece that we had here, I invited one of our longtime, we call her a friend. She's a mother and a supporter of ours, and I just invited her to give a testimonial. You want to make sure that when you ask somebody to give a testimonial, that you really do ask them to limit it to about 3 to 5 minutes. This could very easily turn into one of those open mic nights that never ends, and that's not good for anybody. It's just awkward all around. So, you know, just really convey that you wanted to keep it, you know, pithy. Ask them maybe even to submit something if it looks like they've written 3 pages single spaced and 9-point font. That's obviously not going to be, you know, 3 minutes long. And then you just sort of ask them to tighten it up a bit. But it usually works out very well to have somebody part of the community who can just sort of say, you know, I love this school. I love being a part of this school, and here's why. And, you know, you can even think about, you know, if you do a couple of these, you know, you might want to pick a couple of different folks. It might even be worth it. There's a program out there, a platform called Loom, Loom, which is another video, like desktop video recording option. You might even want to ask several families to just record a few of these. You know, 10 isn't even bad, but not for open house, but just to put on your website so that people can click on them and then they can just watch, and then pick one of them to show during open house, or have somebody deliver one live if you want to. But you want to get the sense, you want to start building that sense of community again. And it's really important to do that with the voices from your community. And video is a really good way to do that. So we use Cheryl. She came and did that for us. I listed off here some of the ways that we invite families to participate with us, and what our community looks like beyond just our classrooms. We did, like I mentioned, coffee with the principal and teachers. We invite our parents to be bloggers with us. We have a Latin colloquial where we speak in Latin. And, you know, we do a Super Bowl fallacy detection event, which, by the way, is tons of fun. You should absolutely do that if you don't do that at your school. We host a college night, and then we do our summer reading clubs as well. And so there's lots of different ways to kind of talk about what our community is like. And I just kind of picked out icons that I thought would sort of quickly capture what some of that list was. Remember that when you're doing this online, you'll see that there's a difference between the way that my slides are for the presentation that I'm giving you, which is a lot of bullet points and just Arial font, and the open house presentation that I'm putting together, which is much more visual, much more colorful. It's got more video to it, because I know that I'm giving you my slides when I'm all done. So that, and there's content in there that you need to actually know and think about, like notes, which is different than when somebody comes to experience an event. So even be mindful of how you put your slideshow together. You'll want to make sure that it's not just, I mean, I could have put a bullet list of coffee with the parent and or teacher and principal, college night, you know, but that would have been very boring. So look for ways to make it sort of visually engaging when you're doing your open house as well. So I went through and just talked a little bit about that. And then I start to, you know, I put up a, you know, an inspiring quote from Gregory the theologian, you know, to educate man is the art of arts, for he is the most complex and most mysterious of all creatures. You pick, you know, a quote, an idea, or something that's about your mission and vision. Then we quickly went through and just reminded everybody about all the different kinds of classes that we offer. This would look a little different for you. You know, your classes, your students aren't picking a la carte the way that our families are. So you might want to handle that a little bit differently. We also have a school within a school. So Scholé Academy is our larger school. We liken it to the way that C.S. Lewis talks about the Great Hall and Mere Christianity, where that's where you don't have to be of a particular Christian tradition to take any of our classes like math or Latin or logic or that kind of thing. But Lewis talks about the rooms off the hall. And so we have some rooms off of our hall. We have an Orthodox school within a school, a Christian Orthodox school. We have an Anglican school within a school. And then we're working on building out a Catholic school within a school. So I took the time to kind of go through what that was in my open house. You probably don't have schools like that, but you probably do have lower, middle, and upper schools. You might have honors programs. You might have, you know, AP courses. You know, there are probably some niches in your school as well that you might want to take some time to explain a little bit of. This is probably the wordiest of all of my pages, and it's the one where I can see eyes glaze over the most too. So in a case like this, you probably wouldn't want to find yourself reading everything, but that's, again, up to you. Then I launch into, you know, what our schedule is going to be. So we're in session one. If you were coming to my open house, we'd be in the middle of our general session for session one. And then there's these other two sessions where they can go visit for presentations, and then a question and answer session that they can go to as well. And I'll show you that in a second. I make sure that everybody knows that all of these faculty members are attending this evening, and that they'll have an opportunity to visit with each and every one of them. And I'll show you another piece here in just a second that will highlight the fact that they probably have already have seen some of those names before. And then I ask if there's any questions before we get started. And so that's what my general session looks like. Just as a welcoming, I set the tone for everything. I set the tone for everything there. Then this is what they would have gotten to do the registration process. So this is before anybody gets to the open house. This is what we would have had them work with. They would have been able to register at our open house webpage, and then I sort of go through how this all is going to work. That there will be, and all the attendees will attend a session one. But then there's sessions 2 and 3 that the teachers are going to provide some introductory comments at the beginning of both of those sessions, and then they're going to allow for some Q&A. The family can pick anybody that they want to visit for either of those 2 sessions, and each one of those sessions will run for about 20 minutes. And then the 4th session is where they can just drop in on any teacher and just ask any sort of follow-up questions. I make sure that they have all of their information for how they log into Zoom. Again, if you're not using Zoom, you would need to give them different kinds of instructions. Make sure that they know that, you know, if they didn't have time to visit, that we were going to record all of the sessions. So if they miss something, they can just watch it again later. Give them a little bit of information about what session etiquette is like. You know, have your microphones muted so that you're, you know, if there's somebody screaming in the background or practicing the piano, we don't all have to hear it, kind of stuff. And then I give them the whole schedule. So this is something that you might want to consider building out. The general welcome session was in this meeting ID room for that evening. Our session 2, I put the time that it would be in there, and then all of our different teachers, our Latin, our grammar, our Spanish and French, writing, mathematics, logic, history and literature, all of these teachers are manning these different rooms. So in that second session, after everybody leaves their general session, they can go pick one of these rooms to go visit. So if they wanted to go talk to our mathematics instructor, they could go and talk and hear a little bit about what math is like at Scholé Academy, and then a little bit of a presentation, and then they could have some Q&A with that math teacher. Or if they wanted to go talk about logic, they could join Mr. Schambach. They could, hear a little bit about what logic is like at Scholé Academy, formal and informal, and then they could ask some questions. At 8:50, they would then switch to go to their next session, and most of those same classes are offered again. All those same people are offered again. So, but now they can go to meet somebody different, hear about rhetoric instead, or about Latin this time, or about history and literature this time, whatever they might have missed in the first session. And then the fourth session is they can just go to any teacher and ask any questions. So there's no presentation at that point. It's just all Q&A. Now, that's how we chose to set up our open house night, so that it would run for about 90 minutes, including my general meeting, then 2 sessions where they were getting some information and then asking some questions, and then a 4th session where they could just do some Q&A. You, of course, could run your open house any way that you want to. The key there, obviously, is to record all of your sessions, because if they wanted to hear more about any one of those classes, then they wouldn't be able to hear everything. But if all of them are being recorded, particularly the presentations at the beginning, then you can post those on your website as well. Great marketing material for you to have anyway, about somebody talking through what 3rd grade is like at your school, or what math is like in the middle school, or whatever your special program that you have. You could be putting those things on your website anyway, so that people who are just visiting might have an opportunity to then see. It can be an ongoing tool for you, even though they didn't attend an open house. So it's just another way to sort of think about an extension of your open house. You're also gathering some resources for you to be able to use on your website for the future as well, for any additional promotion you want to do. Some of those little clips can also be, you could make a copy of any one of those videos, and then you could take just the teacher presentation portion at the front end, and you could, if they're not too long, you could use those in Facebook videos that you could put as promotion as well. So, if you considered, French at the Austin school, right? Whatever it might be, on your Facebook page, that video could be something that families get to watch as part of your ongoing Facebook marketing campaign as well. So the idea here is to use your open house and the recordings and things, so that you can use some of these videos for some other projects later as well. Carol, did you have a question? I think you're muted. Let me just unmute you. Whoops. I can't. I think you have to do it yourself. Go ahead.
There we go. Are parents allowed to pop into several of the session 2 segments? They can stop in for one, then switch to another at any point?
They absolutely could. So if they've gotten their question answered and then they wanted to zip over to another session, they've got all the Zoom meeting numbers there, so then they can just go for whichever ones that they wanted to. They will have missed the opening presentation if they were at the opening presentation for one that's going on in session 2, but they could still pop in and ask a question in a different one as well, and then stop and then watch the recording later if they wanted to see what the presentation was. Yeah. So it's more of a guide, so that you can just give a little bit of structure, and then there is sort of like a formal, process for folks to kind of go through. But people very often make do with and are very resourceful in these kinds of instances. So that's, I'll switch back here just because I showed you what I actually end up doing. But now we want to talk about, like, how do you get to that stage? I mean, that was like the night of, right? That's when everybody comes. But how do we get to the point where you have 60 people who are showing up for your open house, right? And so there's a couple, this is where some of those logistics come in handy. How are you going to get your word out about your school? Is it just going to be through your website and social media? Are you going to use radio broadcast to, to do that? What is your budget for marketing your open house? You might want to think that through. This point right here, I think, is a really important one that maybe we haven't thought about yet. And that is that right now your audience for who's going to come to your school is local, but your competition is now national in a way that it hasn't been before. You know as well as I do that every one of your families who is home right now has been inundated by, are you unexpectedly homeschooling? How can we help, right? Everybody is getting those emails right now. They're getting emails from my organization. Hey, are you enjoying having your kids home more than you thought you were? You can enroll your kids at Scholé Academy for the fall, right? Scholé Academy, Wilson Hill Academy, Veritas Scholars Academy, Memoria Press has the online academy. There are lots of classical online private schools that are reaching out to families right now, and your families are watching too, because they're looking for, what else am I going to do with my kids now that I have them home all the time? I guarantee you they are seeing Facebook ads for homeschooling resources and online schooling opportunities. And some of them who are facing economic hardship right now, and a lot of them might be, are also thinking, gosh, private school is really expensive. I can get a private school education for my kids at for a lot less money by sending my kids to an online school in the fall versus sending them back to my bricks and mortar school. Maybe I can't afford everything, but I can afford this. Your whole paradigm just changed because your families now realize that they aren't limited to getting a good classical education just because of where they live. So just keep that in mind, that as part of your marketing, you're going to probably lose some families because of the economic conditions that they're going to be facing, probably. It'll be the rare school that won't lose anyone because of that. You'll want to also, obviously you need to have a plan to how you're going to minister and meet their needs so that you don't lose all of those families if you can. But then you'll also want to consider, how are you going to bring in new families? And recognizing now that families probably more than ever understand that they have some national options that are going to be financially accessible to them. So just kind of keep that in mind when you're thinking through how to plan for your open house. What is it that you don't want families to compromise on now that they know that they can get some of what you offer by an online option, but they can't get everything that you offer? And I'll even be the first, be one of the first ones in line to say that to families. You're not going to get all of the same things by coming to an online Scholé Academy. You're going to get some of those same things. And you're going to want to make sure that you highlight some of that for families at the open house so that they realize, what they would be sacrificing by migrating away from your online school. So just keep that in mind as far as like coming up with your marketing plan and how you want to think that through for your open house. As I mentioned, in scheduling the event, keep true to your mission. If truth, goodness, and beauty, virtue cultivation, and student scholarship are really important to your school, then think about how you want that open house to convey that message through that whole open, that general meeting that you have. I put here to invite the short testimonials, provide your video montage, provide an opportunity for live Q&A with your instructors, which is what you just saw me kind of going through our schedule. The other questions that you want to ask is, who is the face of your organization? So at my school, when I took over for Dr. Christopher Perrin, Chris Perrin is the name that everybody knows in classical education. He was the director for our school because he was the head of Classical Academic Press. It took a little while for him to transition to introduce me, but now I'm the face for Scholé Academy. But that very first year that we did it, we made sure that he was present for our first online open house because his name, his face was a draw. So who is going to be a draw in your community? It might not be your administrators. It might not be. It could be that you've got a really well-known family in your community and you maybe want to start with that testimonial from that family. If you've got somebody who's, a local pastor or somebody who's really, an engager in your community, you might want to make sure that that person is part of that message that you're promoting, because that name will draw some folks too. Almost thinking about it like, if this was almost like a commencement address, who would be your keynote speaker? You want them to say a few words. Maybe they're the ones that open with prayer. Maybe they're the ones that welcome everybody. Maybe You know, maybe it's a little something where they get to talk for just 10 minutes or so, and it's something that would be a draw for families to get to hear and engage with this person. It might be your administrator, but it might not. So think through who would be a draw for the local community to get them to come to your open house, and think through that as well. The other points here is that you're going to want to secure your department heads and an array of Zoom rooms for all of those questions, and to invite families into it. So not just, you know, think through how many different options you want to give to folks. If you want to kind of cluster K to 3 together, and then 4 to 6 together, and then so that you can do some other, you know, middle school together and then high school, if you want to kind of break things out that way versus going with every individual class as we did, it's kind of up to you, but you'll want to think through and staffing all of those questions so that you get the right people hosting the right places. As far as promotion goes for this, obviously social media, and you're going to want to enlist the help of your committed families. You've got to get those shares and those likes and things on social media. You're going to want to boost your posts. Remember that you, the school, can create the open house, all the open house information, but you want to sort of solicit a team of community, of your community, to help you sort of push the engagement and make sure that you're broadening your megaphone and making sure that other people who would see their posts but not your posts are seeing it as well. So get those shares going. Make sure that everybody is part of your community, and you're going to want to be intentional. A lot of people think like, oh, somebody will see it, I hope they share it. You're going to want to actually put together your team and say, I need you to help actually be part of our social media promotion for this. And I think if you host a meeting kind of like the one we're doing right now, where you individually invite families from your community that are committed and want your community to succeed, and say, this is what I really need from you, and give them specific tasks. How frequently do you want them sharing? How frequently do you want them reposting things? And sort of, you know, a lot of folks in your community don't want to see your schools fail. They want to see your enrollment numbers stay bolstered. They love your schools. They are committed to your schools. Bring them in and put them to work. They'll do it for you, but if you just kind of hope that people see it and do it, you might be disappointed. So be strategic about how you enlist the help of your community. And social media is a great place to put people to work. You want to get your videos clicked and watched. I'll tell you right now, people do not read. You know this. People don't read. They don't read anything, and especially if it's more than just like a quote that like sort of resonates with their inner soul, they're not going to read much more than that, right? They will watch things though. They will watch a video, and so, but your videos have got to be about 60 seconds or less, and it's not very much time. So you're going to want there to be, you know, your logo on there, you know, some great, like an image or two that's really helpful, you know, that sort of shows, you know, obviously smiling, happy families and children, you know, at school, with maybe sports involved, theatrical events, artwork that they've done, you know, whatever it might be. But you want to get these, people will watch, but they won't read. And a picture is worth 1,000 words. So if you want to say that we've got a great and thriving theater program, then make sure you have a little bit of like, you know, a slideshow of the different theater productions that you've kind of put together over the years. And, you know, and then talk about, that's one of the extra things that you get by coming. I can't offer a theater program at Scholé Academy. You've got, for sure, you can do that, and I can't do that, right? You've got your sporting events. You've got some different clubs and things that I can't do. So play that up as well, so that they're seeing that on social media, and not just the fact that we're offering, you know, courses and things for families as well. So think about your videos as a really important way, and videos of your sample classes or of school levels. I think it would be great to put together a slideshow of students in middle school, but cut to one of your teachers who's doing an interview about why they love teaching 8th grade math at your school, right? And so it's a little bit of a testimonial from the teacher. You know, I've been working at such and such a school for the last 6 years, and we just love being a part of this community. The families are so warm and engaging. I really look forward to my class every year, yada, yada, yada. They can use their phones to make those videos. They can use Loom to make those videos, but make sure that you're getting some of those, you know, the teacher engagement as well. In some cases, they might be thinking, well, that's not really what I signed up for. but they did sign up for work, right? So if they want students to come, maybe they'll help create the videos to get the students there, right? So that, just thinking in terms of how you've got to make sure that you understand. I mean, we understand that people are camera shy. They don't feel comfortable in front of the camera. We know that, but families are going, I mean, depending on how long things last, families' economic situations are going to be changed. And there are going to be classes that dwindle in size. I mean, that's just going to happen even at our school. So we've just got to think through, it's an all hands on deck kind of a situation. What can the teachers be doing? They can be sharing with their social media accounts as well. They can make some video testimonials, put some lovely classical music behind that as well, and so that they're sort of talking over it. It'll really give a great sense and feel of, it's more than just the math for me, but it's about, helping them, better know and understand God through understanding how math works, right? Those are the kinds of things, of course, that, I mean, I can rattle off and you can rattle off, but for somebody that's going to be the first time they hear that, and they're going to think like, that's what I want for my kid, right? And you want your teacher being the one to say it, because our teachers are saying it, right? So you want your teachers to say it too. Then we want to think also about your online registration. So we've got a little bit of an issue here with all of the online numbers and everything for Zoom and some of the other platforms with security issues. You want to think through, how do people get access to that list of all of those Zoom meeting IDs? The last thing you want is for somebody to be bombing in the middle of your online meeting and having access to all of those Zoom meeting IDs. I mean, that is just the devil's playground, right? For somebody to ruin your night. So got to think through a little bit. If people are interested, do they make a phone call? Do they send in your email like with an interest, and then you email them back and you make sure that it's a person that you would, that's a real person on the other end that's really interested in your school? Do you say, I'd love to chat with you just for, really quick and just talk to you about how the online open house is going to work, so that you're actually talking with them on the phone, and then send the follow-up email? You just want to think that through a little bit. There have been so many community events that have had somebody who's just had the Zoom meeting number and then been able to, share their screen to an unwitting audience. There are ways to protect it. Zoom has done some things too to make sure that that can't happen as easily anymore, but it more easily happens when you're just posting for everybody to see, hey, here's how you get into the Zoom meeting, So you might want to privilege that information a little bit, make sure that there's just a little bit of a confirmation that this is a person who's really interested in your school, and then give them that list of all of the Zoom meeting ID numbers and that kind of thing. So just think through that a little bit as well. And then for follow-up, make sure all of your sessions are recorded, just like I mentioned, and send those recordings to your registrants and to your attendees. Anybody who didn't register prior to the event, but somehow like their friend shared the Zoom meeting ID number with them, which will happen, and that's fine. You can say in the chat box tonight, give us your email address and we'll make sure that we get you on our mailing list, or that you'll get your free copy of whatever it is that you're offering to everybody, because only the people who registered are getting the free copy of the book or what have you. But give them a reason to give you their email addresses and everything, and then follow up with them as well. A phone call is going to be like gold, because that's a human touch afterwards that an email just isn't. And especially, if it's 60 families, that's really not that many families to follow up with by phone call. You can divide and conquer that from, administrators and teachers. It's great to see you the other night. So glad that you came. Just wanted to touch base with you and see if you had any extra questions. Did you get everything that you needed afterwards? But that phone call is going to be really the connection point, and I guarantee that will be a part of the big difference between families taking another look after that and then just being like, oh, that was interesting, but I'm not sure. A phone call will really be a benefit. So that's the basic idea about, and then I went through here and sort of told you how to build an agenda. Be sure to record, have your introduction, a prayer and a welcome, have your testimonials, your videos, all of that kind of stuff. So that's the basics of giving an online open house, and it's probably the most, there are the most steps with that, because it's actually planning an event. Whereas some of these other things aren't so much planning an event, but they're a little bit easier to manage. Before we go on to the virtual tour or student visits, that kind of thing, does anybody have any questions for me? Again, you'll get my slides and this recording if you'd like. But No questions? Okay. So let's talk a little bit about that online, that virtual school tour. You are not allowed to go in and work at your offices, but you are allowed to get anything from your, as far as I understand it, you're allowed to get anything from your place of business that will enable you to do your work at home. So if you need to go and get over to campus and take some pictures and shoot some video footage of your community, ask your, you could probably still do that. So, you know, obviously don't take a group of 15 people over. That's not what we're allowed to do right now, but like one of you going over with your iPhone or with a nice camera, going into some of the classrooms, and even acknowledging that the classrooms are empty right now, but we're really looking forward to the fall when they're not, right? So turn the lights on, get the pictures of the classrooms, but then also invite people to send in pictures. I mean, kids take pictures all the time at school. Parents have them. If you have a yearbook, you've probably got pictures as well. Put those into that video montage as well for your virtual open house. Acknowledge that these are strange times, right? And that we miss everybody on campus, but we're looking forward to our thriving community again. Don't try to pretend like, you know, you're staging a classroom situation. Everybody knows that classes are canceled for the rest of the year. Nobody's there. Everybody's trying to pinch hit, just, you know, like everybody else is. So just, you know, acknowledge the moment. It's a moment in time. And it's, remember, it's part of your story. It's part of the story of your community. And you're going to want to tell this story really well. So, you know, we're all going through it, and some schools are going to succeed and some schools are not going to succeed as well. You want yours to be one of the ones that really thrives at this time, and make this part of your story. You know, we're looking for a way to help all of our community return, you know, and we're actively working on trying to figure out how to help families that are financially in need. We know that we're a great community and that we would be love to welcome some other families from the community as well. And, you know, build in some of that encouragement right into that virtual tour, because that's part of who you are. Again, brainstorm out, is it virtue cultivation? Is it the high academic standards and student scholarship? Is it truth, goodness, and beauty? What is it that you want to convey in that message so that you are actually telling a story with your virtual tour? It's Happy Kids is a great backdrop, and, you know, some nice pictures is a nice backdrop, but people they want to buy into an experience. They want to buy into your vision. So what is your vision for the school? It can't just be Happy Kids, because you can get Happy Kids, you know, by not giving them homework and lots of sugar, right? So it's got to be something else other than just Happy Kids. Remember that everybody, including our public schools, talks about wanting to cultivate a love of learning. Everybody says that, but what do you mean by that? That phrase can be so trite if everybody's saying it, but you probably mean something really robust by that phrase. So avoid using those, you know, overused phrases. You know, talk about the idea that academics is a way for us to help shape the loves of our children, right? That's what education really is. And unpack that idea. That's what families want to hear. Not that, you know, the high test scores, yes, and all of that, good, those are all good things, but families also want the dream of it, right? They're coming to you because they want something more than just the high test scores. So think about what your vision is and then try to tell that story. This might not be something that you can do on your own. You might need to, there's got to be somebody in your community who has some ability to help with creating a video message of some kind, and they probably will be willing to help you out for either a small fee or maybe even for free to help you build this video message that you want for your virtual tour. And then you should use this on Facebook, shortened versions of it on Facebook, but you should use it on your website pages, share it with everybody, and make sure that everybody gets to see what your vision is for your virtual tour. Excuse me. Just a couple of follow-up things there. Whoops, build that video and slideshow for a full 3-minute piece, but it's also, into 10 to 20 second videos for social media. Again, under 60 seconds is really where you want to go with it. Share with the whole school community and ask them to spread the word, and then update your website with these new resources that you have. Does anybody have any questions about virtual school tours? No, it's really just about thinking about your story and wanting to make sure that you build a good story for your families. Now, distant placement evaluations, I get a lot of questions about this, and remember that live interactive video chats are still possible. I mean, we're doing it right now. If I needed to, I could have a one-on-one session with a student. The parent might have to be sitting right nearby. There's just a few tools that the students will need to have. They need to probably have a printer so that they can, print off whatever it is that you're going to send to them. They might need to have a scanner. My printer is both a printer and a scanner so that they can send their things back. If they don't have a scanner and they can't go buy one, there are lots of free scanning apps that you can get even for your phone, so that right after they're finished, you can just have the parent, it basically takes a picture but turns it into a PDF, and they can send that back to you right away. So as long as they have the ability to print at their house, you can in real time say, I'm emailing this now, here it is. Now they go pull it off the printer, then they can sit, you're going to sit with them one place or the other, right? You're either going to sit with them and administer the test in a classroom, but you can certainly do that, like this, one-on-one in a Zoom room with the parents nearby as well. They can complete their test. You can take them through each phase of it. Just like I'm sharing my screen with you, you can put your, the next blank, so you can have a copy of the evaluation that you're having them work on your screen. You would just share your screen with them and say, okay, now we're going to be on section 2 here. Can you find section 2 on your paper? Hold it up, show it to me. Yep, that's it. Then have them work on the second page. It can be dictation, it can be math problems, whatever it needs to be. And they can, when they're finished, have their parent either picture it and scan it and send it to you, or put it into the scanner and just email it to you. And there shouldn't be any issues then, as long as it's not, 45 minutes later, that whether or not that, whether or not it's like their authentic work, right? So if you're really looking for their authentic work, then just make sure that it can be done, an easy way to make sure that they can submit their work to you. I don't think you'll get a lot of people, cheating on placement evaluations. It is going to be a little bit different, but if you just communicate to everybody, we want to help set your student up for the best chances of success. We can only do that if we get an accurate read on exactly where they are. This isn't meant to any way, frustrate your child or to, put them down in any way but it's really just to give us a baseline so that we know where, where the bullseyes are that we need to be, aim for as targets and where they're already succeeding. That kind of thing can, just help frame it out very well for families so they don't feel any of that pressure of like, it's a test that my student's going to fail, right? But just that we just need to get an accurate read right where they are, mistakes and all, we just need to see it. That's a really important piece for us to have. The other thing that you can do, and this is something that you want to think about, is the CLT. Now the CLT, when most of us think of the CLT, the classic learning test, the CLT in its purest form is the replacement for the SAT or the ACT, and that's fine. I'm not really going to be talking about those today. What I want to talk to you about is the CLT 10 and the CLT 8. Now, both of these, especially given the end of year scenario that all of us are having, for your 7th, 8th, and 9th grade students, it might not be a bad idea, again, not to label them in any way, but just to see, let's just get a baseline of how did we do this year. Giving them a standardized test like the CLT that doesn't go into anybody's permanent record, the CLT 8 rather, that doesn't go into anybody's permanent record, it just helps you see, where did our 7th graders end up for the year? Where did our 8th graders end up for the year? Where did our 9th graders end up for the year? It's just data. It's great if they did well. It's also fine if they didn't, because now you just need to know what holes you need to fill in for next year, right? That's all that it's going to do. And then you have a sense, are all of the 7th graders at about the same level? If yes, great. If not, then where's the discrepancy? Same thing with your 8th graders. It's giving them some sort of a standardized test at the end of the year just to get a baseline might not be a bad idea. Then if you use that same CLT 8 for any incoming 7th, 8th, or 9th graders, you can also use your baseline for how your 7th graders did with any incoming 7th graders. And that can be a good way for them to just get a sense for, does this student fit in reasonably well with where our current 7th graders are based on that CLT 8? So just giving yourself a baseline test that everybody has access to. It doesn't matter if they pass or don't pass. I mean, it's not about that. It's just about seeing, because you've got a little bit of a different scenario this year, you don't know how well your whole school is going to cross the finish line anyway. This gives you a little bit of a read on how did the school do. It also gives you a baseline for incoming students about how they're doing in comparison to your students, just so you can make some placement decisions. So as something to consider. Same thing with the CLT-10. The CLT-10, you could give that to either 9th, 10th, and 11th graders or 10th, 11th, and 12th graders. Again, it doesn't matter what they score on it. It just helps you see what did the 10th graders score, what did the 11th graders score. And then if you have any incoming 10th or 11th graders, you can use your 10th grade averages as a baseline for incoming 10th graders just to see how those kids are doing as a way to give them a placement evaluation. It's, again, some people are not going to like that idea too much, but that might be kind of an easy way to just sort of take the temperature of the whole school and get a baseline across the board. But that's one way to think about it. So you can just go to cltexam.com. The cltexam.com gets you here. There's different pieces of information. These are all the schools and colleges that are going to accept the tests. This is all about the different students. It also tells you the difference between the CLT versus the SAT versus the ACT. Again, that's for the CLT. This is not about the CLT-10 or the CLT-8. So make sure that you're looking at these here, the CLT-10 and the CLT-8. They also have a practice CLT-10 exam, which is free. So that might be something to consider. If you click on practice, it'll take you right here to the practice test. If you click on CLT-8, it'll take you to this main page here where it has everything from CLT, CLT-10, and then the CLT-8. You can see that there are these upcoming dates for taking the test. There will be other test dates after this as well for the CLT-8. And then you can see that these are the upcoming dates for the CLT-10, but there will be more dates as well. And if you contact the CLT, I'm sure they can help you figure out when you could sort of plan for your student body to take the test. And then you could also schedule other families to take the test as well for incoming students. All right, so let me go back to here. You can always ask for student work portfolios and essays and mathematics samples from previous schools and home schools. Remember that in some ways you are kind of going through for incoming students when you're trying to do placement evaluations. Have them send you a little portfolio of their work. Have them make copies of the things that they've done, but then send you like a manila envelope that has some of their work, essay samples in there, math problems that they've done, essays that they've written, science projects, maybe a report that they've written for science, whatever it might be. But you can ask for a portfolio just to get a sense of the child. It's not a bad idea to get some of that kind of information from students, even if you're doing regular placement evaluations. You get a sense for what the students are interested in. Come up with what you want their essays to be about. Make sure that you're having conversations. I mean, talking with a third grader online like this, sometimes they can really get into it. I mean, they're on camera. It's different than the way that they usually do it. They're at their home, so they're usually pretty comfortable with things. But, having a good chat with a kid online, parents can be off camera or whatever it might be, but that can often be a very good way to, just kind of get to know the student as well. Think about all the things that can be done instead of seeing all the barriers because you're not just right with the student. But there are lots of ways to engage and connect with placement evaluations for students. Does anybody have any questions about placement evaluations? No? Go ahead, Heidi.
Are you going to be covering obtaining school records with all these schools closed, or is that a part of this, what you were just discussing?
So the obtaining school records from other schools, that's probably going to be something that's a lag unless they have access that they could send you those things digitally. A lot of folks aren't going to be going back into the schools to get those materials. So you might just have to ask for sort of an whether the family has their own. Everybody should have access because everything's online, like with RenWeb or whatever for the grades. I would imagine that the administrators could at least send you an unofficial transcript, at least from the last few years if they've been in a different school. But they should be able to give you that. Now, some of the formal things, they might have to wait until they get back into their actual office buildings and that kind of stuff to get you everything you need. But I would imagine that if you asked them, they could get you what they needed. I mean, so much of what all of us are doing is online anyway and accessible online. It shouldn't be a barrier.
Yeah. We've had several schools tell them once we're back in the building, we'll send it. So we said, send us a report card. I mean, whatever they get their hands on. But I didn't think about going through an administrator. they would probably be able to send that unofficial transcript. So
Yeah.
thank
Yeah.
you.
Sure. Yeah. The administrators will probably are the ones, if anybody's going back to the building with any kind of regularity just to check on things or whatever, it's probably the administrator. So they might even be able to collect a few of those kinds of things and do a little bit of work while they're there, you know, or at least take the things home that they would need. But yeah, administrators should probably be able to get you some of those things. Any other questions about student evaluations? Again, if relationship and community is a big part of who you are as a school, then make sure that your placement process feels like communicates that as well, with the phone call, with the Zoom meeting with the kid, you know, a couple of times, not just once, that, you know, it feels that, you know, there's a friendliness to it, that they know exactly what to expect. And there's, you know, you've really kind of taken, I mean, all of us know that there are excellent teachers, and then there's probably, and this was not me at my school, I wish it was, who is just like that person that is the most lovely, wonderful, you know, friendly, outgoing person that is at your school, like that works at your school. You might want to see if that person could potentially be the one who makes the initial contact and, you know, just really facilitates the whole experience so that it feels disarming, it feels comfortable. Make sure that everybody who's going to be using the technology, if they're going to be using technology, really knows what they're talking about and is comfortable to help the family who maybe, if they're not part of your school and they're not using Zoom right now, the first time that they log in could be the first time that they've ever logged into Zoom. So make sure whoever's administering the test is going to be able to help them troubleshoot a little bit with some of their technology problems. You don't want the person on the other end like, oh dear, you know, I've never done this before, and gosh, I don't know how to help you. You know, we'll have to reschedule for another day. I mean, that's not going to be a good first impression. So make sure that whoever's hosting those placement evaluations and that experience recognizes that they need to be the master of this little universe that they're going to be hosting in, and they need to be able to help a new person. A school just invited me to go and do this talk for them privately for their teachers, and they wanted me to use WebEx instead of Zoom. And so I said, well, I don't use WebEx, so invite me in, and then let me get acquainted with it first. And the person that they sent to meet with me had never used WebEx either. And as a result of that, I said, can we just use Zoom? Because I know what I'm doing with Zoom, and I could probably help anybody else have a problem that was having a problem. So we actually shifted from using their WebEx for their school onto Zoom because the person that was supposed to give me some instruction didn't know what was going on. So just make sure you don't fall into that same category. The last thing that we'll talk about just quickly is like class visits. So you're going to want to create a protocol and a process for student visitors to jump in and to join a class and observe. So it actually can be pretty easy to have students come and join. You just give them the Zoom meeting ID number, but you don't want to just give them the Zoom meeting ID number and have them come. They need to know what to expect. So the teacher of the class needs to know what to expect. The students in that class need to know what to expect. There's going to be a new face. If this was a classroom, Susanna, Jean, Christine, Stephen, and Rebecca, I would actually excuse you at this point because your videos aren't on. I don't know who's on the other side of that video. If you guys, the rest of you all were all kids, I wouldn't let somebody in who just had their name up on their screen. I would have to see that it's another kid in the room instead of just letting there be like a black screen there. So think about sort of online safety. You don't know who's on the other side of a black screen with a name on top. The name could be lovely, but the person could be a creeper. You just don't know. So, make sure that they understand their videos are going to have to be on. Is the teacher going to kind of fold them into the conversation and invite them to, participate? If that's really off-putting to them, they might need to know that ahead of time, or the family might need to say, we would really rather just observe. We don't really want Joey to have to participate today, whatever it might be. Stephen, you don't actually have to turn your video on. That's fine. I know you've been battling with your video the whole time to stay in. It's fine. So yeah, just give them an expectation of what the participation is going to be like. Do you want the parent to be sitting right next to the student and observing as well? Will that change the dynamic of the class that's actually in session by having that happen? You know, sometimes having an extra adult that's visible in the room can make everybody very, very quiet and very reserved. And then a class that's usually very lively and engaging is silent, right? And that gives a bad impression to the student who's visiting, because it doesn't look like this school is thriving and that the kids are really engaged. It could just be because there's this new adult in the classroom that makes everybody feel a little bit odd. So if you want, you know, for little kids, maybe that doesn't matter so much. For middle school and high school kids, that can be a thing. So just tell the parents, if you want them to be sitting off camera, they can still be observing, but maybe they don't have to be seen by everybody. So just kind of think through, what do you want that experience to be like for the student? Prepare them well. What's it going to be like for your class? Remember, you want to, just like if you were going to be welcoming a student, you might give a particular, you might tell the kids, hey, so-and-so is going to be visiting your class tomorrow. Make sure that you know, the student's name is Christian and he's going to be visiting, and, you know, just make him feel welcome. The teacher might go around and say, you know, this is what everybody's name is or whatever. He's going to be part of your community in a real way. So go that extra step and fold them in to make sure that you're thinking through how you can make those relational connections. Remember, nobody's going to be buying into how well your technology works, because that's not how you really do school. They're going to be buying into, how did it feel? What was the content like? Did the student feel welcome, right? That's what they're going to be buying into if they're going to come to your school. So make sure too that the teacher, whatever classes that the student is going to be visiting, that the content for that day is going to be something that they would be, you know, it's going to be kind of their A game, right, for the presentation. If that was the day that it was going to be all lecture, like what I'm doing, this would not be a fun class for a prospective student to come to, because I'm just, you know, information dumping for an hour. But if you want to change things up a little bit, so if they know the student is coming, how else can the class be engaging beyond just a lecture? And make sure that the teacher is kind of prepared for that. Let's see here if I forgot anything. Yeah, instructors should be ready for visitors. Phone calls from the department head or the head of school can both at the beginning and the middle and the end of the process will close the gap between the prospective family and the school. Every prospective family should sort of get a high touch experience. Remember that kind, I mean, you don't want to, you know, you don't want to pester them, but, you know, a quick phone call, like, or to say, let's practice a Zoom session just to make sure you're comfortable, just gives you another connection point with them, right? Even if it's only 10 minutes, make sure that they know how to get into Zoom and make sure that they can log in. Let's make sure your microphone is working okay. Can you find out how to turn your camera on? I mean, 10 minutes beforehand, that's one connection point. Then they go to the class. Maybe they go to a couple of classes. Then you follow up, and maybe those teachers follow up. It was great to have you in class today. So glad you could join us. You know, we'd love to let me know if you have any questions. And an administrator follows up with a phone call to say, I know that you were in classes this week. You know, I'd love to know if you have any questions for us. How can we improve our process? What could we have done to make you feel more welcome? You know, we can certainly invite you back again when we're back at school. And here's some names of some families in the area who would be willing to continue to, you know, connect with you and your family too. So maybe over the summer, the kids could get together or whatever it might be. I'm sure you have families that would love to do something like that. All the kids are looking for somebody else that they can FaceTime with, right? Because they're getting bored at this point in some cases. So a new friend that they, you know, met in class one day, that might be a great thing. Book club that you're going to do over the summer, whatever, invite them in, but make sure that they get a high touch experience for those classroom visits. It's just another opportunity to welcome that family and sort of in a broader way into the community. Well, that's all I really wanted to kind of go over, just more ideas for things, things to consider. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to take them. I hope you found it helpful, but let me know if any questions, comments, anything I could improve for if I do this again. I think I'm doing it again tomorrow. Go ahead, Andrew.
You mentioned Zoom rooms, and that when as I've been getting to know Zoom, using it for class and things like that, Zoom rooms has a very technical meaning within Zoom, and is some sort of like a kind of a conference room. I think it's set up a certain way for that.
Mm-hmm.
That's not what you mean, though, is it?
No, I just mean these Zoom meeting ID numbers. I call them rooms because Zoom is mostly for like webinars and for video conferencing, but we're using them for school. And so schools have classrooms, so we call them our Zoom rooms. So that's just a little bit of my way.
That's what I thought. I just wanted to make sure. Thank you.
Sure. Anybody else have questions? Comments? No? Well, it's been a pleasure to talk with all of you. I wish you all the best. I'm going to give you my email address. If you have any questions, please feel free to email me. Somebody else from our organization will send you the link to this recording. They'll send you my slides. They'll also give you the slides from my open house, just so you can see sort of what we did again, and give you that schedule that we use to actually host the open house. And you can have all of those. So you'll get 4 things. But I'll give you my email address as well. It's jhodge, Hodge, so J and then Hodge, at classical subjects with an S on the end, so it's plural, classicalsubjects.com. jhodge at classicalsubjects.com. All right. If you think of anything, let me know. Good luck to everybody. Take care.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Take care.
You too.
Thanks so much.
Sure.
This opened up a lot of ideas, so thank you. It's kind of stretched my imagination for how to handle all of this.
Good. I'm glad. Good luck with everything.
Thank
Thanks.
you. Bye.
Bye.